Hello viewers, welcome to my channel. I'm Hasham Ali Khan. This video is the continuation of the last video where I have explained about AS10. Accounting Standard 10 deals with property, plant and equipment. Last video I have explained you the scope, the purpose of AS10. So four points are there for applying this Accounting Standard 10. First of all, we have to recognize. How to recognize that an item will come under property, plant and equipment. Then depreciation, impairment, loss if any. All these will come under AS10. Then I have explained you the items. What are the items that fall under plant, property and equipment? And different terms which are used in this accounting standard. Like what is depreciation, what is depreciable amount, what is impairment loss, what is carrying amount, what is gross carrying amount. All these things I have already explained. So if you right now join, you may not be able to understand. So I suggest you watch the first video of this AS10, then you come to the second video. It's a big accounting standard compared to other accounting standards. So it will not be complete, it cannot be completed only in one video. So 3 videos we require for completing this AS10. In this video, I am going to explain you about recognition principle. How to recognize the cost of property, plant and equipment. So before starting the video, take the screenshot of the points which I have written on the board. Then I'll explain the complete point. Now, the topic of this video is recognition principle. That is the main part, main aspect of AS10. How to recognize the cost. So here an enterprise evaluates under recognition principle all its cost on property, plant and equipment at the time they are incurred. So the main concern about this AS10 is which are the costs to be recognized in the property, plant and equipment. Every cost will not be included. Every cost will not be capitalized. So here some principles are given which are the costs to be included and which are the costs should not be included in property, plant and equipment. So these costs include. So broadly AS10 has classified the cost into 2 categories. The first is cost incurred initially to acquire or construct an item of property, plant and equipment. First time the cost is incurred to acquire, to purchase the property, plant and equipment. That is called the initial cost incurred. Then cost incurred subsequently to add to or replace part of or service it. Sometimes after purchasing, after acquiring the asset, subsequently in future some more costs will be incurred to replace it, to service it or to add some more items in that block, in that class of assets. So initial cost and subsequent cost. Simply we can say initial cost and subsequent cost. So in this way 2 costs are attached to property, plant and equipment. Now one by one we will study. What are the items of cost that will incur under initial recognition? That means first time when we acquire the asset or we construct the asset. That is called initial recognition. Initial recognition means acquisition and recording of the property, plant and equipment for the first time in the books of account of an enterprise. So in a company, first time when cost is incurred to acquire the asset or to construct the asset, first time. For example, a machine is purchased by paying 10 lakh rupees. So 10 lakh rupees are paid to purchase the machine for the first time. It is called initial recognition, right? A property, plant or equipment can be acquired either by payment of cash or by through HP or exchange of assets, or it might be self-constructed. How this first time asset can be acquired? Different cases are there. By paying in cash. That means an asset is acquired by paying in cash. But this is not the only method. Apart from this method, one more method is there, acquiring the asset by hire purchase, HP, installment basis. That is also one of the method. Another method is we can acquire the asset by exchanging. We are having an old asset. We are trading off the old asset in place of a new asset. That is called exchange of asset. Last one, self-constructed. Some assets are self-made by the company itself. So these are the different modes in which the initial recognition will take place. Initial investment will be made in purchasing the asset. Now, acquisition through payment in cash. The most commonly method of acquiring the asset is by paying the cash. Now we'll study what are the details of AS10 regarding purchase of an asset by paying the cash. If a property, plant or equipment is acquired through payment of cash, the cost of such asset is calculated by including the following expenses. AS10 has specifically given that these are the items included. It is not giving an exhaustive list. It is giving only an illustrative items. Illustrative list that these are the items that will be included in the initial cost of the asset. The asset is property, plant or equipment. So what are the items to be included initially? Tax. First of all, purchase price net of trade discount and rebate. We have to take the purchase price net of trade discount and rebate. For example, we are purchasing a machine. The cost of the machine is 1 lakh. But the supplier is giving us a trade discount of 10%. So 1 lakh rupees is the list price, catalog price. But the supplier is giving us a trade discount of 10% and rebate of 5%, so 15%. Deduct 15% from 1 lakh. So 1 lakh into 15%, 15,000. So 1 lakh minus 15,000 is 85,000. So purchase price we should take 85,000 after deducting trade discount and rebate, if any. If there is no trade discount, no rebate, directly we will take 1 lakh. Then to this we have to add all incidental expenses incurred on acquiring the asset. The incidental expenses are, example, taxes and import duties. Normally in every country we will have the taxes. So when we purchase something, we have to pay the tax. The tax amount is also included. Example, we have purchased a equipment for rupees 1 lakh on which there is a 10% tax. We have to pay 10% tax. So 1 lakh into 10%, 10,000 rupees. 10,000 rupees is a tax amount that will be included in the cost. Included in the cost. So we have to add. Then freight or transportation cost. Any expenditure incurred in bringing the equipment to the place of business. Place of business. That should also be included. Loading and unloading cost. The equipment is to be loaded and then unloaded. The expenditure incurred in loading and unloading should also be added to the purchase price. Then installation and assembly charges. After receiving the machine has to be installed. But installation is a professional activity. Some professional people will do it. So we have to make the payment. So installation, assembly charges should also be added. Next comes transit insurance. If any insurance premium is paid on transporting the equipment from the supplier place to our business, insurance amount should also be added. Next comes professional fees. Any professional fee paid to acquire the asset, that will also be added. Startup and cost of trial run, site preparation expenses, any other expense. So any expenditure incurred in acquiring the property, plant or equipment, all these should be added. The purchase price and all these items will be added. That should be recognized as the cost of the property, plant or equipment. So in examination, you have to remember this. So first of all is initial recognition. Initial recognition means at the time of purchasing, acquiring or constructing the asset, what are the costs to be included? These are the costs. The following should not be included in the cost of property, plant or equipment. AS10 has already also given some of the costs which are indirectly related to the asset but should not be capitalized. It will not be added to the cost of the asset. Which are the costs? Inauguration cost of new business. After acquiring the asset, the business will be inaugurated. Any expenditure incurred in inaugurating the expenses will not be a part of the cost, should not be included. Similarly, advertisement or promotional cost. The business has given some advertisement or promotional efforts, promotional campaign. So any expenditure incurred on advertisement, promotional campaign should not be included in the cost of the asset. Thirdly, staff training cost. For after purchasing the asset, the staff has to be trained. So any expenditure incurred on staff training is not a part of the asset. It will not be capitalized. Administration and general overheads. These are completely not at all related to the purchasing of the asset. It is the completely indirect expenses. Administration, selling and distribution, this should not be taken. Lastly, abnormal loss at initial stage. If any abnormal loss incurred at the initial stage itself, not to be included. So these are the items to be included in the cost, and these 5 items should not be included in the cost of the asset. And these rules will be applied when the asset is acquired by paying the cash. Now secondly, self-constructed asset. Sometimes a business will construct itself the asset, the property or plant or equipment. Self-constructed asset, what are the costs to be included? Direct material, direct wages, direct expense, allocable overheads. That means whatever overheads allocated on this asset should be included. So these items add together is the cost. That cost should be recognized if the asset is self-generated. Third one is hire purchase asset. Nowadays, many business organizations, they are acquiring the asset on hire purchase or installment purchase. So in case of hire purchase, only the cash price should be recognized as the cost, not the hire purchase price. Because hire purchase price includes interest. So at the time of acquiring, we have to segregate how much is the cash price and how much is the interest. The interest charges will go to statement of profit or loss. It will not be capitalized. Only the cash price will be recognized as the cost. This is the principle given by AS10. The next one is exchange of assets. Sometimes the old assets will be exchanged for a new asset. In that case, the fair value of the new asset will be recognized as its cost. So the fair value, the value at which both the parties agree, that value is called the fair value. Fair value of the asset acquired is the cost of the asset to be recognized. That's all. So actually, the recognition principle says 2 types of cost are there: initial cost and subsequent cost. Initial cost, the cost incurred at the beginning, first time when we acquire or construct the asset, that is called initial. And subsequent cost means later on, in future, some more cost will be incurred on the asset. Now the question arises whether we should recognize it as the cost or not. We should recognize the cost or not. That is the principle. So here AS10 has given the principle how to recognize the subsequent cost. So here I am going to explain you about subsequent cost. As per AS10, an enterprise does not recognize the cost of day-to-day servicing of the asset in the carrying amount of the asset. These costs are recognized in the statement of profit and loss. What AS10 says, when we purchase an equipment, the equipment requires day-to-day expenses like repairing or servicing or oiling. These are the day-to-day expenditure incurred on the asset. But AS10 says these recurring day-to-day expenses should not be added to the cost. It should be taken to the statement of profit and loss. That means it's a revenue expenditure. It's not a capital expenditure. It should be taken to statement of profit and loss, income statement. Secondly, some parts or items of property, plant and equipment may require replacement at regular intervals. Some equipment or plant are such in nature that frequently we have to replace. That means some engine, some part, we have to regularly replace it. Now the question arises whether this replacement cost should be included in the cost, should be capitalized or not. Then what AS10 says, such cost of replacement are included in the carrying cost of the asset if the recognition criteria are met. Condition is given by AS10. If the recognition criteria is met, then only the replacement cost will be recognized, will be added to the carrying amount. Otherwise, if the recognition principle is not met, we are not going to add up in the carrying amount. We are taking it in the income statement, statement of profit or loss. Similarly, some assets such as aircraft may require regular inspection for faults, irrespective of replacement. Such costs are included in the carrying amount of the asset if the recognition criteria is met. Again, just like replacement, here inspection. Some assets are there which are regularly to be inspected. Apart from replacement, regular inspection should be done. Example, in case of aircrafts, whether replacement is required or not, every time regularly inspection of the aircraft should be done. Now the question arises, these inspection charges should be capitalized, should we include in the carrying amount or not? Again, AS10 says it depends whether it satisfies the recognition criteria or not. If it satisfies the recognition criteria, then include it. Otherwise, don't include and take it in the statement of profit or loss. Next, such costs are included in the carrying cost of the asset if the recognition criteria is met. All minor inspection costs are written off to profit and loss account. Routine minor inspection cost, small amount of inspection cost should not be capitalized. It should be charged to revenue account in statement of profit or loss. Now, measurement after recognition. Measurement after recognition. That means subsequent. Subsequent cost, how to measure it. So, two criteria are given. After initial recognition, an enterprise can choose either the cost model or revaluation model as its accounting policy. A business may have different accounting policies to recognize the subsequent cost. Subsequent cost. So how to recognize, how to measure the subsequent cost? Two accounting policies are given, that is cost policy and revaluation policy. In examination, you have to write down all these, what I am explaining here. Measurement criteria. So, however, the chosen policy must be consistently applied to the entire class of property, plant or equipment. Once the policy is chosen, the business must follow consistently the same policy every year. The policy should not be changed every year. That is the principle. Now, cost model. Two models are there for measuring this subsequent cost. Cost model. This is a very easy model. As per this policy, the asset is carried out at its cost, less any accumulated depreciation and any accumulated impairment loss. The cost policy means here we will take into account all actual cost incurred subsequently, less accumulated depreciation and accumulated impairment loss, if any. Right? So cost model is very easy. Whatever actual cost incurred, that will be measured, that will be taken, recognized. But revaluation model, this is a little bit complicated. That means at the end of the year, the subsequent value will be revalued, will be compared. As per this policy, an asset whose fair value can be measured reliably should be carried out at a revalued amount. If the business follow this policy, revaluation model policy, then what will happen? At the end of the year, it will be revalued. It will be checked whether the balance sheet carrying value is representing the fair value of the asset or not. If the carrying value is not, then we have to change the value. Such revalued amount is calculated at its fair value at the date of the revaluation less any subsequent accumulated depreciation or subsequent accumulated impairment loss. If the enterprise finds that the value of the asset is not the fair value, then it has to consider what would be the fair value of the asset after deducting accumulated depreciation and accumulated impairment loss. Revaluation should be made with sufficient regularity. Revaluation should be made with sufficient regularity to ensure that carrying amount does not differ materially from the fair value of the asset at the balance sheet date. Revaluation method says the carrying value should represent the fair value of the asset. Then the fair value of the asset should be determined for market-based evidence. How to find out the fair value? By comparing with the market value by a professional qualified valuer. The frequency of revaluation depends on the changes in the fair value. How many times we have to change the value? Now, if the fair value asset changes frequently, revaluation can be considered every year. If the fair value of the asset frequently is changing and significant, then every year we have to find out the fair value. If the fair value is changing very rarely, so we can make the fair value once in every 3 to 5 years. If the asset is revalued, the entire class of property, plant and equipment which the asset belongs should be revalued. If a single asset is revalued, the whole property should be revalued at the end of the year. So this is the end of the first part of this 10, that is AS10. Inshallah, next video I'll explain you about the depreciation part of this AS10.